The Players Guild of Dearborn is bringing the critically acclaimed musical Next to Normal to their stage, and today we're talking with director Cayla Kolbusz, Harwood, and Mohamad about this production. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
I'm so excited. I'm not gonna lie, I just saw the pro shot for the first time. I've never seen the show before. And this is such an exceptional show. This is such an incredible show. As a psychologist, this is something that is very near and dear to my heart. But currently, Cayla, you're currently the night before opening night. Mm-hmm. How are you feeling about this?
I don't know if this is an exciting answer, but so calm and happy. We are so ready to open. We're so ready to share this with an audience. The cast and the crew have put in some amazing work. So I'm very, very excited and ready to go.
Mohamad, are you feeling the same way?
I'm also scared to say that I don't feel nervous. I'm just so excited at this point in time because I feel like we are very ready. And I'm just ready for people to see the show, to be honest.
Kyle, it seems like the energy is very calm, very ready, very serene about this. Are you feeling the same way?
Yes and no. I do feel a little bit nervous about this one. I mean, I don't always get nervous before a show opens, but this one in particular, I think there's a certain level of pressure to do a good job portraying this show. And as ready as we are, as ready as I feel that I am, it's still a little bit nerve-wracking. I just want people to really enjoy it, you know?
Yeah, there's a weight to this show. Like, there's a lot of importance to the show, but it is, again, such an incredible show. But maybe there's also people that aren't familiar with Next to Normal. I know that this has won lots of awards and stuff like that. But Cayla, for those who maybe aren't familiar, what's going on in this show?
So it focuses on the Goodman family, mainly Diana. She's a wife and mother, and she is struggling with mental illness, namely bipolar disorder. And it really shows how that not only affects herself, but her family members, her relationships with them, their relationships with each other. And it shows how everybody, whether you experience it personally or not, are affected by mental illness.
Absolutely. I mean, again, this is something that I think that so many families struggle with, and that we don't really have a lot of shows that talk about it. There's not always a conversation about how important it is to be upfront and to be real about it, and the impact of trauma and grief, and again, mental illness.
Yeah, I think that's why this show sometimes feels a little uncomfortable for people, because just mental illness in general has this stigma that we're not really supposed to talk about it, that it's not normal to have it. And I think that's where the title of the show comes in, right? But I think the beautiful thing is at the end, you realize that it's much more normal to have these types of struggles and questions about your life than it is not to.
Absolutely. As a psychologist, when I was watching this with a friend, I was very much trying to kind of analyze it as we're going through. And he was just like, you're talking about it like it's just so normal. And I'm like, to me, this is normal. But for so many people, this is, again, not a conversation that is very comfortable having. But it's just so important. Mm-hmm. So Kyle, you're playing Dan Goodman in the show.
Yep.
Who is Dan to you? And then what is your your narrative through the show with this character?
So Dan is someone that I really identify with. I kind of feel in a way like I'm playing myself, maybe a little bit heightened, but he's kind of a typical dad type character, but he really just wants what's best for his family and what's best for his wife. And he's kind of willing to go to great lengths to achieve those things, and just get things back to some normalcy. He kind of revels in the past and the woman that he married when they got married, the relationship that they had at that time. And I think he holds on to those things, makes it very important. He deeply loves his wife, but it can be a very difficult struggle. So he just means well, but he doesn't always do the right thing.
I was going to say, one of the things that struck me the most about his character is that there's almost I'll say more so at the beginning, but there's a level of toxic positivity where he's just trying to be so happy and keep everything going. which tends to be kind of like that person is the backbone. They're making the family kind of function. But there's also such an incredible weight on their shoulders to have to do so.
That is definitely very true, and definitely something that we're trying to portray in our production. He's, like I said, he's willing to do whatever it takes to keep things running, and sometimes that means a pep talk that is not really wanted, or just constantly staying positive. Which, like I said, I really identify with Dan, so that's kind of my toxic trait is toxic positivity. Always trying to stay positive, sometimes to my detriment. So Dan's the same way.
I think one thing we talked about at the beginning was that we really wanted all of the characters, all 6 characters, to show both the good and the bad in them. The show doesn't really follow these archetypes of like, here's the hero and here's, the bad guy and here's this. Every character and every person has both in them. So that's been our goal.
I will say I absolutely love that because, they're all humans are very, there's a mix of good, bad, gray, it's somewhere in that gray area that we kind of fumble through, in life. And so these characters, they all have flaws, but they also all are trying to live a normal life.
Mm-hmm.
So Mohamad, you're playing Gabe, which is a incredible character, incredible vocal range you need for this. But who is Gabe to you, and what is kind of his narrative in Next to Normal?
So Gabe is son of Dan and Diana, and he's Natalie's brother. So he is almost 18 years old. He's the regular, angsty, fun, rebellious teenager. But a lot of what Gabe does in this show is kind of tied to memory and how the past lives inside of people. I think Gabe is the main catalyst to getting the family to confront all of their repressed traumas and griefs, and he's kind of the main he pushes them to do that individually and then collectively as a family. And I relate to the character because, of course, I was 18 and I was a teenage boy, and I dealt with a lot of the things that he dealt with, like feeling unseen and feeling unheard, and just trying to voice your perspective and opinion as someone who doesn't really have a voice in a house of adults, and just feeling neglected in that kind of sense. But Kyle was saying, I think it's such a realistic depiction of how there is good and bad in every single character. There aren't ill intentions. Even if the intention is not to hurt people, you can hurt those around you. And I think Gabe is kind of a mirror to all of the characters and helping them see that in this show.
Such a perfect answer. And again, that was the right way to dance around that.
That's why I was kind of losing. How can I say this without?
So with a show like this, Cayla, then, where do you kind of begin with your directorial process, especially when it's a show that can be quite heavy with the topics that we're talking about?
So for me, I went in with a plan to start with getting to know each other and creating a safe space where we all found care and respect for each other and we felt comfortable being vulnerable, because that doesn't come right away. We spent a good amount of time talking about the plot and about character before just jumping into the blocking. And I used some theatrical intimacy tools and tricks throughout there, just making sure that even if it's just asking them some certain questions at the end of rehearsal to get their mind out of Next to Normal and more into their own bodies, even if it's just, what are you doing this weekend? Or what's a song that you really like? Or, we started doing this a joy jar. So we've been putting in little slips of paper with things that we love about each other. So we end every rehearsal pulling some of those and then hearing them. I think just getting ourselves back in our own bodies and out of the story that is so heavy.
That's incredible. I mean, you truly are bringing honor to this story and also being respectful for what you're talking about here with the people as well, because I can only imagine, Kyle, that it is heavy sometimes to walk away from this story and to kind of leave it on that stage.
It's an emotional roller coaster for sure. One of the most difficult things about the show for me personally is just getting to that level of vulnerability on stage. I've never had to or been asked to get to this level in a production before. And so I'm walking away from almost every time that we run the show with tears on my face and my eyes are red, and it's really tough. So being able to then sit down with the cast and bring it back and say, okay, I'm Kyle, I'm not Dan anymore. And because the cast has grown extremely close in the short period of time that we've been working on the show. The whole production crew and everybody actually really has gotten very close. And it's really incredible to be able to sit down together and laugh and talk about the things that happened during the run and just reconnect after having such an emotional, traumatic experience together. So it's been really rewarding. I don't want it to end. And I'm not looking forward to when it's over.
Because it sounds like there truly is a lot of emotional catharsis that's happening as kind of a cast and crew, like as a group here, as you're going through the story.
Definitely.
There really is. And one thing that I think would be surprising, it was surprising to me, is how much we actually laugh during rehearsals. We've spent the majority of the time able to laugh, with each other. And that's been really, really nice.
Absolutely. I could totally understand that. So Mohamad, with this show being like the way it is, and your character is very vulnerable, and there's a lot of, I want to say like facilitating different, mental health conversations within the show. How do you feel like this production kind of portrays the mental illness authentically and also being very respectful in that?
I think, like Cayla and Kyle were saying, we did such a good job of the world building beforehand and personally building our characters and then building them together that we really saw all of our characters as such human, like we said earlier, reflecting all of the good and the bad. And so every single audience member will be able to see and resonate and connect with these characters as humans and see themselves in their actions and their inner thoughts and their inner dialogues. And so I think since we did such a good job of like building that realism in this world, that we did and are doing a good and raw and realistic depiction of mental health and mental health struggles, and also mainly because it talks about things that many families possibly and or currently experience, but don't always talk about openly. So there are, like Cayla said earlier, a lot of uncomfortable moments. And there were a lot of moments that we purposely put like attention to sucking the air out of the room, as Cayla would say, really wanting the audience to sit with a lot of what was happening on stage and not really like just letting it run along. Like we wanted people to sit and think about these things and be able to connect and resonate and kind of reflect inwards on if they can see themselves in these characters, if they've been through this before in some way or another. So yeah.
With this being such, there's such a delicate balance here, Cayla, between the realism of the story with also the musical's like more abstract or psychological moments. How do you as the director kind of help find that balance?
Well, I think that the show itself is about this woman with bipolar, right? So we are seeing real opposite sides of the spectrum in terms of her emotions, but also for me in terms of the music. You have this rock musical going on in some moments, and it feels almost like it doesn't fit in with the story that we're telling. And then you have these soft moments in the music, and we're trying to balance the difficult emotions with the laughter. There's real comedic moments in the show as well. So really trying to identify which moments are which and how to flow and transition from one to the other, and reminding the cast it's really easy to get lost in those really low moments. So really enjoy those moments that don't, hit as hard, because they're important too.
Absolutely. with the music, Kyle, how do you feel like the music shapes the emotional journey of your character of Dan?
Dan's songs in the show are so different from each other. But they really, I think they're so perfectly crafted for whatever Dan is trying to accomplish at that time. There's in the first act, there's this song called "It's Gonna Be Good," and this is kind of an example of that toxic positivity that we were talking about. He's talking about how everything is going so well. Diana's on some new medication and she seems to be doing really well. The whole family is happy, and it's going to continue to be good. We're just going to keep having good days, and it's just this really bouncy. It's honestly, the funny thing about it being a rock musical is that I feel like half the songs aren't really rock. They're very popular sounding. Like I could hear these songs on the radio, as opposed to a lot of musical theater that feels like musical theater. And so like this song is very bouncy and maybe kind of feels more like a musical than other songs in the show. Yes. But then there's songs in the second act or at the end of act one that are these ballads that are very beautiful melodies and are really trying to convey this love between Dan and Diana, or a sadness that's there. I mean, the focus is so much on grief in the show, and I think that they portray that extremely well. So Dan is kind of all over the place, though.
I think that the writing is so brilliant because it will give you this funny, like crazy moment, and you just are having so much fun with it. And then in a second, it just brings you down, and you kind of feel these wild ups and downs. And I have to believe that this was a pointed choice in the writer to somehow make the audience feel even a little bit of what Diana feels with what she's going through with her illness.
I would agree with that. I would definitely say the way that it swings upwards, like extreme highs and extreme lows, that is like by definition what bipolar is. And so I feel like that was a choice to feel the chaos and what's going on in her mind. Absolutely. Mohamad, same question for you. Is just how do you feel like the music shapes your emotional journey as Gabe?
I was gonna also agree with the music being an emotional roller coaster. There are a lot of highs and lows, and it kind of like it will give the audience whiplash here and there, which is exactly what the story, what we're hoping to do with the story anyway. But Gabe as a character, he gets some of the most like electric rock musical moments in the show, which you'll find as an audience member are some of the most intense scenes and intense numbers. And then also just the score in general mixes that rock intensity with very vulnerable and emotional moments. And it's one of those shows like where there is no musical moment that is wasted. Like you have to kind of be tuned into everything. Nothing is a throwaway. Listening to the lyrics and even just the musicality and the melodies, you'll be taken through that journey where you'll be like able to laugh. Then the musical moments will leave you feeling uncomfortable, whether that's like it just getting really musical here, like anything that turns minor, or a big pause or a long break. Everything is very intentional and like getting the audience to really like pay attention and lock into what's happening on the stage. And either way, it's going to be it's going to force the audience members to really think about this show for days. I know you said you just watched the pro shot for the first time, and I remember I was like stuck on it for like weeks after that, and singing the songs and going back to listen to them later. Like I was finding out more about the story that I missed the first time. And so since the show does move pretty fast, it's one of those things that I would say, I hope people will come back and see it again, or even just listen to the music later to kind of get any moments that they missed the first time. And any moments to that emotional roller coaster that I think, is one big puzzle. So you don't want to miss one, like any of the puzzle pieces to that. It plays a very big role in the storytelling for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And piggybacking off of what you said, my final question, and Cayla, I'm going to throw it to you, is just what conversations or like what hopes you have that come from the audience seeing this performance of Next to Normal?
That is a big question.
Sometimes I got to ask it.
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
Yes. Thank you. No.
I hope that audiences come with an open heart and an open mind. This show might cause them to question their own beliefs on different things. It might ask them to be vulnerable in a way that they are uncomfortable with. I hope afterwards they question just the general stigma of mental health and our kind of inability to talk about it, and understanding that there are people that are struggling that don't feel like they're seen or heard. And these people can be as close to us as our neighbors, our friends, our family, and just being more open and empathetic to that. So I'm hoping that's what people are thinking about when they leave.
Sure. Absolutely. And Kyle, closing us out, what do you hope that the audiences take away from this, or what conversations do you hope that it sparks?
I mean, I just really hope that people are able to connect with all of us individually. I would love it if people were able to walk away from the show thinking at any given time in the show, I felt like I was watching myself in any of the characters or all of them. I so related with Dan in this scene, but then I so related with Gabe in this scene, or Natalie, any of the characters. Just, I want this show to be impactful to the audiences that see it. And I think that just putting on the show itself is such an impactful thing. But I really think that this particular cast will have the ability to touch the audience's hearts and minds. It's such an important story that people don't hear about enough. And I want them to walk away thinking, wow, I like, not even that was great, but more like, I have so much to process now. I have so much to take home and think about, rather than just, oh wow, their voices were beautiful. I want them to walk away saying that story was beautiful. That story was profound.
Absolutely. And I hope that they do as well. I know that I'm super excited to see this production of it. I think that many people are talking about it, but thank you so much, the three of you, for your time and for being here with me today. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you about Next to Normal.
So much.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
So Next to Normal arrives at the Players Guild of Dearborn March 6th and runs to the 22nd. So get your tickets now and we'll see you at the show.